YouTube with the rare occasion that I do a live stream, but I want to talk a little about K.J.Wright. So what's interesting is that if any of you watched the press conference yesterday with Mike Mayock, it was interesting to see that besides being too talkative, in my opinion, they always think Mike Mayock likes to hear himself talk. And so in this little bit under a half an hour press conference with the media, he had an interruption. He kept looking throughout the day. It looked like he was distracted halfway through the press conference. Eventually, he took the phone, read a text, told everyone, "I'll be right back." Later on, he came back with this big smile on his face, and that's when you had the entire press corps smiling and asking him, are you going to tell us what that was all about? And obviously no one did. But the interesting thing is that everybody speculated soon after that, because he did say, oh, it's an ongoing saga. And the speculation was it had to do with signing. Some people thought, oh, hopefully in a way back Mac. I didn't think that. Initially, when I thought was K.J.Wright. And I should have tweeted or did a video about that as soon as that came out, but I held back. So my instincts were telling me it was K.J.Wright. Turns out that I was right. So you had different media that were joking, oh, well, he was waiting for his pizza. Look at the guy. He's pretty slender. The guy's not worried about eating. So obviously, to have a press conference interrupted by Mike Mayock, again, a guy who likes to hear himself talk, leave the room, come back with a smiling face. Like I said, there's this elation that just came over him. And it turns out earlier today, about 12 o'clock, Raiders officially signed K.J.Wright. Now, if we know the backstory, about 3 weeks ago, maybe closer to a month, he met with the Raiders, and he left the Raider facility in Henderson without the contract. And my speculation, if you watch one of my previous videos about K.J.Wright, that's a money play. Even then, I mentioned in my video, and please feel free to go back and watch on Zennie62, the thumbnail is "Show Me the Money," if that makes it easier for you to look at the K.J.Wright video, is that K.J.Wright's smart. He's a veteran. He knows that patience is a virtue, that it would pay off. He wasn't going to go down, I don't think, from his price. Because when you look to see what his previous contract was with Seattle, it was a 2-year, $14 million contract, and 6.5 of that was guaranteed, I think, per year. And so you got to speculate, at 32, in real life, that's not old at all, but in the NFL, they tend to see that to be an older veteran, getting older and not really a valuable or value. I think differently. I think his wisdom, his knowledge, and his experience in the NFL is the key factor here. But he's looking for an extended contract, possibly his last. Let's hope not. So I speculated that he was looking for at least a $6.57 million contract. The Raiders weren't willing to do that. Now, back then when I did the video, I told him he's not going to budge from that price because he realizes that linebackers are going to go down. He knew the need of the Raiders, and he knew that they needed him more than he needs them. And so turns out today that he'd end up signing a 1-year deal with the Raiders. And my speculation that it's close to 6.5. At least that's what I think. Let me see. So I was trying to read it, disappeared, whoever sent that. So when you consider that they restructured, the Raiders announced today they restructured Nick Witowski's contract by $2 million. They also re-signed Derek Carrier, who in 2018 signed a $5.5 million contract. It was a 3-year contract, meaning when they re-signed them, they restructured that contract. So I'm assuming those two contracts got restructured for the purpose of signing K.J.Wright. I believe in the cap space, the Raiders only had about maybe 2.5 million left in the coffers. I could be wrong, but I think it's about 2.5 million, possibly moving towards the 3 million. But the fact of the matter is, I believe the numbers haven't came out, but I speculate the numbers are probably closer to 6. You hear people saying he probably signed for 4.5, 5. That's very possible. But the fact that it waited this long and they're restructuring the contracts for with Nick as well as Derek Carrier, that he knows that we're going to be looking for that strong linebacker, and that's the position he'll play. He'll play strong linebacker, also known as left outside linebacker. And you know, he was real successful with Gus Bradley. Well, Gus Bradley, he played middle linebacker in the different other positions, but the last few years with Seattle, he played the strong linebacker role on the strong side, and I think he'll continue to do that with the Raiders. And so so that's the good news with the Raiders. The other thing is that what other needs do we have to fill? You know, it's speculative at this point. I think K.J.Wright was a big to do. We have Denzel Perryman. If you've seen the videos here by other vloggers, you know, as well as in the press conference, Denzel Perryman, even in the news conference, wasn't even aware that K.J.Wright signed. I'm not sure why they didn't make a bigger deal out of it. I'm sure that, you know, there has to be some protocols that he has to go through. Maybe that's why they didn't make or blow it up as much. But the fact that Denzel Perryman didn't even know during that same press conference earlier today was a shocker to him. And speaking of Denzel, we know that through the press conference, he did reiterate that he's considering taking the vaccine, which, me personally, if you guys know my situation, I am a big advocate of that vaccine because when it comes to football, I won't even get into the semantics about my personal thoughts about that. But when it comes to football, it's a pure business decision. If you're not vaccinated, you're risking the entire team, because we know that this Delta variant is extremely contagious, and we see that with players going down recently. CeeDee Lamb just got out the COVID-19 list. A few other players just kind of reinstituted themselves back into the league after having come down with COVID. Now, as Denzel Perryman mentioned within that press conference about getting K.J.Wright and all that, was that he doesn't want to be an outcast to this team or a distraction. And he's pointed out the current NFL protocols. He's not allowed to eat with the team. He's not allowed to hang out with them. The only thing he can do is stay in his room and go to work. But you notice that during that press conference, he was wearing a mask, and he's going to have to continue wearing a mask and separate himself from individual teammates. So the fact that he's reconsidering it is a good thing. I think it's something they should all do. If anything, just for the benefit of your team, the benefit of your teammates. You know, this is not like any other virus that this potentially could affect other people, with the team being as strict as they are when it comes to the vaccine. So again, leave your comments below. Let me know what your thoughts are with regards to K.J.Wright finally signing with the Raiders. Again, I speculate that that contract, when it is revealed, it's a 1-year deal. I don't suspect you want to consider it a 1-year make it or break it deal. The fact of the matter, he's a proven veteran, an extremely great player. He's probably, I think in 2020, he ranked in the top 7 of linebackers. And so let's see and hope, see what happens. Again, any of you guys have more comments, try, you know, for some reason I just can't read it. It pops up and disappears pretty quickly. So yeah, K.J. Wright, middle linebacker, strong, played different positions with Seahawks, but again, playing on the strong side. Let's see what it says. It says, correct, they should get vaccine. How you doing, Jules? I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. Sorry, I couldn't read your previous messages. So yeah, I mean, it's just a good thing. And as Eric pointed out, he did his thing on Denzel Perryman. Check out his video. Check out my videos. Also, let me see. Eric says, you think the Raiders have enough receivers? That's a good question. I don't, for me, it was disappointing John Brown left. I suspect that, again, what's the old adage when it comes to football? Availability is the key factor here. If you're not available to play, you're hurt. The decisions have to be made whether or not you're going to proceed or they'll keep you on the team. And look, that might have been the case for John Brown. Rumors have come out that he felt he was disrespected by the team because he came in feeling he was going to slot in and be one of their top two receivers behind Ruggs or maybe even ahead of Ruggs. And it turned out the case that the Raiders, at least John Gruden, feels that it's Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards, and then you have Hunter Renfrow. And essentially, with all the other options the Raiders had, it looked like he fell sixth in the depth chart. And so, again, he felt disrespected, he left. My question with regards to John Brown was how much money did the Raiders had to eat from that contract, because it was a guaranteed contract. And I think he signed for, what, $3.2 million, maybe. I think the signing was $300,000, so it's closer to 3.5. Let me see if I can read this before it disappears. He asked to be released and something happened. Yeah, he asked to be released, and I think, as I just said, I think a lot of it had to do with he was so low in the depth chart. He wanted to be a starter. Whether or not he got that chance further down, I don't know. But if you look at Sunday's game against the 49ers, I think the writing was on the wall. I think he had 13, or there was a 3 in there. I know it was 13 or maybe 23 snaps, and he only caught, I think, one pass for 2 yards. I mean, he is a speedster. He would have been a great combination with Henry Ruggs. But when you go into a season, you have a player asking for his release, and if you refuse that release, he's just going to be a distraction to the team moving forward. So I think at this point, the Raiders didn't really have an option but to release him, because if you don't want to be here, the Raiders don't want you here. And that's the thing when you look and think about Gerald McCoy wanted to be here. He's, I think, such an excellent pickup. This is attitude alone is infectious. He's a positive guy. He's a humble guy, but he's a hard worker. But also, the reports coming out that K.J.Wright, because of Gus Bradley, whatever we think about Gus Bradley, is that he has harnessed in this environment where players want to come back and play for him. And that's probably one of the key things about the Gus Bradley pickup. K.J. Wright wanted to play for the Raiders. Once he knew that he wasn't going to go back to Seattle, he said, I wanted to go to the team where I felt like I could flourish, and that was the Raiders. And hence, that's what happened 3 weeks ago, close to a month, that he met with the Raiders. Just the money wasn't there, or at least the Raiders at that time weren't willing to put up the money for that. But again, since then, Nick Morrow went down, Javon White went down, and so the Raiders weren't left with too many options. So again, when you look at my previous video, I did basically tell you that, do I think K.J. Wright is going to go down from his price? No. And why should he? I mean, this is he waited it out, and this is exactly what happened. Eventually, someone's going to have to bite the bullet. I think there was some compromise. I don't think that he received that similar contract he got with Seattle 2 years ago. And so I personally think it's around the 6, maybe 6.5 million with maybe a signing bonus. But I wouldn't be surprised, as people have speculated, it's about 2 million under that, maybe 4.5, maybe stretching it to 5. But my speculation is around the 6 area. I could be totally wrong, but that's my speculation based upon his previous contract and the fact that he held out so long. I mean, there was 31 other teams that looked into getting K.J. Wright, but again, didn't sign him. And it wasn't because of his age or the fact that he's not a good player. I think it comes down to the asking price. And so there we have it. Let me see if I can read something else here. Not asking price was the issue with other teams. Didn't want to sign him according to reports. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's the case. I mean, reports, yeah, I mean that may be the case. I haven't read that reports, but when you have K.J. Wright out there, regardless of other teams didn't want to sign him, you're gonna take a look just because of his pedigree. And so, yeah, there might be teams that say, no, you know, we're good where we're at, and it might be a necessity thing. But of course, there's teams out there that needed to fill in that spot. And like I said, I knew eventually that something was going to come to play. I knew he would sign eventually before the season started because of the need out there. Again, training camp players always go down. The fact that he wanted to come play for the Raiders, and eventually the Raiders still wanted him. They worked something out and eventually got him. So I think that's great news for us. But you think about that leadership role that they're bringing into the Raiders. You got Gerald McCoy, you got Denzel Perryman, you also now you have K.J. Wright. These are established veterans that are hard workers, that know nonsense and want to play. And as Denzel Perryman pointed out in the press conference, have you ever talked to Gus Bradley? He mentioned it, he put it in those phrases, you know, almost like posing the question to the reporters themselves. You want to play for this guy, you know, and as he said, you know, he don't yell, he don't scream at you, he comes and talks to you. And you heard that from the beginning of the OTAs going into the preseason. The one thing that impressed some of the veteran players or the players that are already here on the roster, on the Raiders roster, was that he spent a lot of time getting to know them as people. They weren't just X's and O's to him. They weren't just simply commodities, but there were, you know, people who meant something to him, and he wanted to get to know them. His asking price was the latest why other teams didn't, was the issue why they didn't want to sign him, according to reports. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I suspected all along, that it was his asking price was too much. Again, reiterating what I said several times already, is that I wouldn't be surprised he was trying to look for that similar deal what he had with Seattle, which was a 2-year, $14 million deal that he signed his last contract, and I think 6.5 of that was guaranteed. So yeah, it didn't surprise me. Again, when you get older, for whatever reason, the NFL, obviously for obvious reasons, because of the physical impact that it has on your body, once you hit 32, they start to look to you as an old guy. And again, reiterating what I said earlier, in reality, in life, that's not old at all. But you know, he's probably looking for extended contracts, possibly one of his last contracts. Now, what I think this does, at least for the Raiders with this 1-year deal, is that K.J. Wright has many incentives. The fact that he wants to play for Gus, he wanted to come here, you know, he's going to ball out this year. Whether or not, you know, that play level was steadily increased throughout the season. I don't think, you know, the OTAs, I don't think he was with the team. You know, he wasn't with the team during training camp, so he has to build up to that level when he's ready. But I suspect that throughout the season, you're going to see him ball out, because for himself, he wants to prove to everybody who didn't want to sign him long-term contract, I could still play regardless of my age. And wouldn't be surprised if he balls out this year for the Raiders that they re-sign him. You know, you got to realize too, next year that cap space goes back to its normal levels. At least that's the suspected thing that's going to happen, and that's based on revenue coming into the league. And again, that's why it was smart the Raiders, regardless of what you think, had that vaccine policy come into the stadium. There's no revenue coming into the league or the individual teams, and nobody's there to spend money. So what do you think Raiders will get to add for the linebacker position? God, I don't know what other players the Raiders could sign. Obviously, they're still looking, but you know, when you think about the fact they added Perryman, Denzel Perryman, they also added K.J. Wright, and what we have already established in the team, you know, I think we're good there. It's always good to have depth, and because one thing, if you look at that San Francisco 49 games, I know Zennie brought up the fact that if you look at the team, they couldn't read the options. they couldn't read option any of the plays that were going on. Now, granted, I know the 49ers knew going into this that the Raiders were playing their second and third stringers, because I think it was 30 players, essentially almost half the team stayed back, and they sent the second and third stringers to take a look at them. And according to the reports, that there's discussion with John and the 49ers coach Shanahan that there was a certain model they were going to follow, but that was a surprise to the second, third stringers, some of the read options or the trickery that the 49ers were doing. Having said that, though, that's not an excuse, because you got to remember that when players go down, you're resorting on your depth chart. And you look at the players on that game, look at it, you'll find it on YouTube again. Look at that game again. Look at even the second half of the game. You see how spent the Raider line was, the defensive core, and you see how small they were compared to the 49ers offensive line, as well as their defensive backs, or defensive line period. Is that the biggest defensive player on that field last Sunday, I think, was Nick Kwiatkowski, or maybe, I think it was him or Tanami. I forget which one of them. It was that there were two. He was 240. He was like 6'2", 240. Everyone else was under 240, about 225, 230. And you'd see these behemoth of men on the other side in the 49ers. I mean, they're just going to be tossed around like rag dolls if those players had to play a whole 4 quarters. So there's always needed depth. I think besides needed depth, you have to get bigger and stronger. But whether or not we fill in those spots, it's hard to say, because who's out there left? I know that there's a whole list of players that were cut or released, but the Raiders are smart enough to look at through that list and decide who is valuable, who's something that we can cherry pick out and utilize them in our system. And they haven't done that yet, and I suspect maybe all their resources and time is trying to figure out this K.J.Wright deal. But I think if there's something or someone more valuable that they can add to the depth chart, they would have done that already. So, we still have, 8 days, or maybe a little bit longer before, God, what is today? Today is the 1st. We're playing on the 13th. So we have roughly about 11, 12 days. Today is 2nd, excuse me, 11 days before Monday Night Football. Whether or not we add any additional players, I don't know. Do we need another wide receiver, as it was asked earlier? I tend to think we do. I'm not completely sold on Henry Ruggs. We know that he has speed. And my hesitation in even admitting or saying that he's good to go is that we didn't see him play in any of the preseason games. Whether or not John Gruden's doing that purposely to not show the packages he has for Henry Ruggs or Brian Edwards, but the fact of the matter, we didn't see any of them play. At least I didn't. So, I don't know how good he is or how he has bounced back from last year. But yeah, it's still disappointing to me that John Brown left. Again, when you ask to be released, that's always going to backfire on us, because no one's going to want to be there. Another question, I think, let me see if I could go back here. Brian Dixon, I think at this point we need to keep an eye for any breakout players on our squad. Yeah, I think that's the case. Again, when you think about someone like Nate Hobbs, I mean, PFF ranked him top rookie on their list, and this guy just showed out every time he had this opportunity. And going into the OTAs, and you hear some of his thoughts during the press conference, yeah, he had a big chip on his shoulder, and he's playing like he does. I mean, he really wants to play. Whether or not he'll be with the Raider long term, it's good to see whether or not he'll do that. So yeah, I mean, Nate Hobbs to me probably was the most impressive player during training camp. I'm really happy for the guy. The fact that he he took the spot basically out of a lot of other players. I mean, Carl Joseph is out. I thought he would stay. I was looking for him to stay because my name being Joseph, I wanted to get his jersey and have Joseph in back of the jersey. But hey, you know, he's not on the team anymore. Plus, I wanted that old 42. I didn't like that 43. You know, 42. When I think of 42, I always think about Ronnie Lott. And so, that's besides the point. So let's see what else. Word for Carr didn't take any snaps. Yeah, to me as well. Just because you look at the rest of the league, their starters played at least a couple of series. From Tom Brady played. Garoppolo played. We know Dak Prescott's still mending that shoulder, and so he didn't play. But it looks like throughout the league, everybody's starting quarterbacks, you know, kind of got their juices going and kind of got it back into the swing of things. Because throughout training camp and throughout OTAs, Jerome McCoy said that himself. There's nothing like going out there in a live game situation and getting hit, and not just practicing with your teammates who are real cautious with you for injury purposes. And so, you know, I don't know if John Gruden feels that, okay, he's been in my system for 4 years, he should be good to go. But I hate the fact that going into Monday Night Football, that's going to be his first time seeing any live action. He did scrimmage with the Rams when they were here in Thousand Oaks. But that's not the same because he still had that red jersey on. No one was going to hit him. No one was going to bull rush him down. But again, those are simulations. And as much as you want him to have kind of real game experience prior to starting the season, yeah, to me that's a little concerning. You know, I can't make heads or tails of why John will always justify his actions. So, you know, whether or not we believe he should have started a series or two, you know, it's my speculation that he should have. So, yeah, I mean, other than that, I think that's all I have to say for today. Always remember, keep it here on Zennie62. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out Zennie62 Vloggers. Like our videos, send it over to your friends. It's important that we get enough coverage to make sure that we continue this great coverage with the Raiders. Let's see. Okay, so keep it here on Zennie62. Don't forget to like, subscribe. And I don't know how often I'll do a live stream. That's kind of not my thing. But good to see you guys. Good to hear from you on your messages. And we'll catch you next time.